Hi guys, John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And I want to talk to you guys about attached garages. And it's a super important aspect of a home inspection is to make sure that we look at and inspect properly any garage that's attached to the home. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. It's not like an attached garage is sort of a freestanding building, 100 feet away from the house. This is actually part of the home structure. It's attached to the main dwelling, and that's really important for home inspectors to look at that properly. So I just want to talk about some of the things that home inspectors in New Jersey are going to be looking for in attached garages. And this is not a comprehensive list. Certainly, these lists are just there to help you guys understand, some of the things that we're going to be looking for. But it's not a comprehensive list. There's hundreds of things that, good home inspectors are going to certainly be looking for. So one of the things to start off is actually water penetration, water infiltration into the garage. And that can take many forms. That could be, leakage from a roof. It could be seepage around the exterior perimeter walls that are actually seeping into the home, into the garage, where we see efflorescence, possibly mold growth, or, water damage to the sill plate. So that's super important, is to look for any kind of water penetration into the garage. And I pay particular attention to any driveways that are sloped toward the garage, because obviously if a driveway is going to slope to the garage, it's going to shed that water, and that water is going to end up right in front of the garage. So we look for that, of course, and we're trying to make sure that there's a means of water control. Is there a trough drain present? Or is there some type of swale, or is the garage level of the garage built up so there's a lip to help prevent water, which is probably lesser, lesser ability, to contain the problem, than would be a drain. But one of the things that we're going to be looking for sure, is water penetration in a variety of areas, of your attached garage. It's very, very important. Another thing that we look for as home inspectors is cracking of the garage floor slab. And some of these older garage floor slabs are going to have a lot of cracks and a lot of maybe settlement or movement to the garage floor slab. And this generally is not that problematic, because usually this settlement is independent of the foundation of the home. Usually, just talking in just basics here. But we look for that. But if there is, really a lot of movement, if there's, something that is really off, then obviously that's something that we want to look into further, and we want to try to give you an ideas of what's going on. So most garage floors are going to crack because the substrate under them just really isn't all that good. And a lot of these older garage floor slabs weren't very thick. And so over time, you get settlement and movement, water penetration, water under the slab, and then you get all this kind of cracking and movement and sloping sometimes of the garage floor. Not so much in newer construction or newer homes, but, sort of in those homes back from the, 40s, 50s, 60s, and that type of thing. So another important aspect of doing that is looking for the garage, any damage to the garage floor slab. We're also going to look for any type of heating equipment on the garage floor, basically like a water heater or a furnace, on the garage floor, because there's requirements regarding water heaters, furnaces, and combustible appliances that say that we have to have those higher than the anticipated level of a flammable gas vapor discharge or release inside the garage. So generally speaking, we want either these, the furnace, the water heater, set back into another area of the garage with a raised threshold and proper fire rated door, or we want to have them raised high enough off the ground so as to not be able to come into contact with flammable gas vapors. And it's true, some of the water heaters now obviously are sealed for this, but some of the furnaces are not. So we do really want to make sure, and now this is becoming lesser of an issue with modern equipment, but there are some times where you'll see just a standard, gravity boiler in the back of a garage where the burner's down, a couple of inches off the floor, and then you're going to have, that problem. So that's something that home inspectors and home buyers should really keep in mind is if you have this equipment in the garage, is it protected from those flammable gas vapors that can sometimes happen, in the garage. So that's important. Other times we'll see oil tanks in the garage or gas meters located in the garage. And these things need certain protection. We don't want to ever have a gas meter or an oil tank be subject to, a car hitting it in any way, or even coming into contact with it where we can breach that and have a gas leak or an oil discharge from an unprotected oil tank in the garage. So we do want to see some protection if there is a gas meter or oil tank in the garage for sure, right? We don't want to have that just in front. Sometimes you see the oil tank, it's in the front, right front corner of the garage. You're pulling your car in and there's no protection of that oil tank. So typically this happens in older homes, but still we got to just look at those things. I think those are important also to identify any of that stuff. One of the major things that we find as far as safety, right, would be, improper fire rating of the walls and ceilings inside the garage. So the garage wall where the garage meets the structure of the home, that has to be a fire rated wall. And also if there's living space above the garage, that has to be fire rated too. And many times we'll find that these walls are breached and there's, people did work in the ceilings. They had a leak in the plumbing or a bathroom above the garage, and then they did some opening of the ceiling, and now you have just basically an open ceiling with visible insulation and no fire rating. So home inspectors here in New Jersey were for sure going to be inspecting the fire rating of the garage. We're going to make sure that everything is pretty well sealed. And that's really important because we want, if a fire were to develop inside the garage, we want the fire to stay in the garage until the occupants of the home have a chance to escape. So that's why the fire rating is there. We definitely need to look for that. It's really important. Another thing is penetrations that go through the garage ceiling or the garage wall at its intersection with the house. We want to make sure that there's proper fire stop collars and that these penetrations are really well sealed. A lot of times you will find piping penetrations, duct penetrations, and other penetrations, electrical and whatnot, and they won't be properly sealed. They'll have wide gaps around them, which breaches the fire rating. We don't want that fire, if it develops inside the garage, to quickly chase to the living space. This is also helpful for carbon monoxide. If you forget you're running your car or something in the garage, at least this gives you a little bit of a measure of protection, not much, but some measure of protection to isolate that toxic carbon monoxide to the garage space rather than have it leach in the living space. Also, when there's ductwork inside the garage, home inspectors are going to be looking for rigid ductwork. We're going to be looking for solid ductwork and not flex ductwork in the garage, because the flex ductwork also that destroys the fire rating of whatever it's going through, the ceiling or the wall, because that flex ductwork is just going to burn if there's a garage fire. But if we have that rigid ductwork in the garage, that helps us achieve the necessary fire rating that we have inside the garage. And speaking of fire rating, we want to be making sure that we have a fire rated door that separates the garage from the living space. And that door should be a solid core door or a metal door. And if you're not sure, sometimes there's a sticker on that door. But we never want to see sort of an interior door in this location, because an interior door is hollow usually, and it's just going to burn through very quickly. It's not going to give you that opportunity as an occupant of the home is to vacate that house in the event of a fire quickly. So anything we can do to point out issues in the fire rating between a attached garage and a home is really really important, because this is safety stuff. It's not just, minor stuff. This has to do with occupant safety. And part of our job as New Jersey home inspectors is to give people, idea of what safety upgrades need to be done, in the home that they're thinking about buying. Now, during the garage inspection, we're going to be making sure that, and a lot of these doors are obviously they're automatic doors, and we're going to be making sure that they're safe for operation, that the springs look good, and that the door mechanically is operating as it should. We never want to see, any binding or any kind of, sort of inoperation of the garage doors where the rollers are not operating properly. We want to make sure that all the components of these doors are present and that they're free and opening and closing properly. And one thing that we pay especially attention to is the garage door springs. Are they stretched? Are they old? Garage door springs do have a life expectancy, a life cycle. Yes, they do last quite a while, but we want to make sure that there's no damage or no problems and they're not stretched. Stretched springs, they can break and they can cause occupant safety hazards. We're also looking for safety wires in those garage door springs or containment cables. So we want to make sure that if that garage door spring does give way, that it's going to be contained on that safety wire or cable and not just spring out, possibly injuring somebody or causing damage, to something in the garage, like a vehicle parked there. So we want to make sure that we look for those safety features. Of course, very, very important for occupant safety. We never want to see large gaps under garage doors. I'd say 50% of the time of the houses that I inspect, I'm looking at gaps under the door, and then people wonder why they have mice in the house, why they have pests. That's a good reason why you have pests, is that look at your garage door and make sure that's nice and flush to the surface of the garage floor, right? We want to make sure that there's no gaps there. A mice can get into anything that's sort of your pinky width. So, they're little critters. They can get in, and once they get in, they make more mice. So, listen, you've got to make sure that those garage doors are perfectly sealed and don't have a lot of gaps on there for sure. And then we look for the electric eyes safety device or the automatic openers. If a child or pet were to cross the beam of those electric eyes, we want to make sure that those electric eyes are working properly. And I always like to bring the doors down. I step in front of the door, and I want to make sure that those doors rebound, right? Because we want to make sure that if those doors start coming down and a child is in the vicinity, that child doesn't get injured by that door coming down. So that's really important to look at too, is all the safety devices inside, for garage doors too. You'd be surprised at how many different things can go wrong with a garage door opening system. And home inspectors, are going to be looking for that and making sure that this is safe for you guys. So those are some of the things that home inspectors here in New Jersey are going to be looking for as far as inside an attached garage. Detached garage is a little bit different. I'll have maybe another video, going over that. But, this is not a complete list. It's just to give you guys, maybe you are looking for a house here in New Jersey, and you're wondering kind of what home inspectors are going to be looking for, what we're going to be inspecting. So maybe this helps some of you understand some of the things that, we're going to be looking for. Anyway, it's John from LookSmart Home Inspections. I appreciate you hanging in there and watching the video. Let me know when I can help, and I'll see you next time.